Services Committee today. On this committee are myself, Councillors O'Connor, Councillor O'Toole, and Mayor Clayton. So we're going to call the meeting to order, and I'll look for an adoption of the agenda. Councillor O'Connor, please.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you for that. And that carries. We have no delegations. We'll go into reports, and I'll look to Chief Glavin for our service area update, please.
Thank you, Chair Palat. Starting with Engineering and Transportation Services, we've recently posted a RFP for the Mission Estate Storm Rehabilitation, as well as a request for tenders for the Phase 2 of our road rehabilitation program. We've recently closed RFPs for the Bear River Control Structure Annual Regulatory Inspections, as well as the Crystal Lake Tree Planting Project that is in partnership with FRIA. One capital project that is currently ongoing is the traffic signal rehabilitation. Just for information, there is a planned traffic signal outage tonight on 100th Street and 108th Avenue after 8 p.m. in the evening hours, where they're switching over some new cables and power supply. They'll have appropriate traffic accommodation measures in place for that one. In corporate facility management, we're currently participating with Human Resources in the Tour of the Trades, which is touring students through the Eastlink Center and Design Work Center on February 25th to give them a look into the inner workings of those facilities. As well as the service center, we're just wrapping up some of the repairs that were necessary on the 3rd floor due to some flood damage. In Fleet, we are collaborating with Careers to bring on a registered apprenticeship program student who's looking to become a heavy equipment technician. We're expecting to have this student in place in early March, and this is something we're looking to do on an ongoing basis. In development services, effective immediately, we're going to be switching, or not switching, we've already switched to email for business licenses as a result of the Canada Post strike. Where we couldn't deliver them through traditional means. We took a look at other municipalities, and this is the standard practice everywhere, but here, generally speaking, especially for similar-sized municipalities. So as of right now, that switched during the Canada Post strike, and we're going to continue that practice. We haven't had any negative feedback to this point. With development engineering, we recently met with the Urban Development Institute to conduct some stakeholder engagement with them on our new development agreement and to update them on the 2025 e-changes. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thanks for that, Chief Glavin. Any questions? Councillor O'Toole.
What was the date that you were having the tour of the that was presented? September 8th, is that it?
Thanks, Chair Palat. February 25th is when we're doing the tour of the trades.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councillor O'Connor?
Yes, I'm just curious. I know that the people down south have put a 30-day hold on the tariffs. Have we, as a city, put any contingencies or plans in place that will, if we do see tariffs come in, how will that affect our operations?
Your work.
Certainly a topic of discussion. We'll take the lead of the province and the federal government in how we respond. The likely scenario is in pricing for certain goods. There are very few goods that we directly buy from the U.S. Most are through third-party vendors from Canada, although production does occur in the States. We'll have to monitor prices and stills to see if they remain within our expected budgets, but no specific change right now beyond monitoring pricing.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll move on to our next item agenda, our public engagement, and I'll look to Chief Glavin to introduce, please.
Thanks, Chair Palat. Administration was directed to conduct a review of our public engagement and advertising processes for rezonings. We've completed that review as well as a jurisdictional scan and are not recommending any changes, but we're recommending that this be received for information. But with that, I'll put it over to Mr. Johnson for some details.
Thank you, Chair Plot. At the November 4th, 2024 City Council meeting, Council directed administration to bring back a report to the appropriate standing committee with a review of the public engagement and advertising processes for rezoning. This was the same evening that the Trader Ridge rezonings were presented to Council for consideration, and a resident of the Arbor Hills neighborhood came forward with concerns about public notification. Their concerns focused primarily on what they perceived as insufficient consultation by the city and the developer. Rezoning applications require a public hearing, which must be advertised in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. That states that there needs to be an ad in the newspaper or through a process outlined in a bylaw adopted by the municipality. Since there is no longer a newspaper in Grande Prairie, we follow our public notification bylaw C-1414 that mandates posting notices on the municipal website. In addition to the MGA requirements, the land use bylaw imposes further obligations for rezoning applications. This includes letters to adjacent property owners. While the land use bylaw specifies that the circulation area may vary depending on the specifics of the application, our standard practice is to notify landowners within a 60-meter radius of the subject property boundary. In addition to letters to adjacent property owners, there's a requirement that signs be posted on the property. For applications that may increase land use density or intensity, the land use bylaw also includes provisions for when a developer is required to do adjacent notification. Those are detailed in the report. As Chief Glavin noted, we also did a jurisdictional scan to see what other requirements other municipalities had and felt that we were relatively consistent in other practices. And with that, it is recommended that the Operational Services Committee receive this report for information. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Johnson. Councillor O'Toole and then Councillor O'Connor, please.
I was just going to do business when it's ready.
Okay, we'll just come back to you on that, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, this was one of the concerns that I'd brought up previously, is that I know that I looked at the chart, and the maximum I think is Red Deer with a 100-meter radius. However, if it has a dynamic effect and an effect on the whole area, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't take a look at, and I know this is why this report came back to us, is that I felt that there were people that are kind of indirectly affected by a development, and so the signage is really important. Part of my question is, on the website, is it clear that people can go and say, here's where it is that the land use changes are posted? Because I don't think people are relying on that. They expect to see it somewhere, either by a letter or by signage, but I think we need to direct people to the web page, and is it easy to find?
Through the chair, there is a public notices section of the land use bylaw. In addition to that, when we do send letters to adjacents, there is information in the letter as to how to find additional information online. Whether it's easy to find on the website or not, I guess would be up to user abilities, but it is public notices right at the bottom of the website as one of the permanent links. However, admittedly, it would take a fairly studious resident to continuously monitor public notices if they don't get a letter, if they don't see a sign, to just continuously go to the website to see if there's something that's posted. But that's basically the same as if there were an ad in the newspaper. It also takes a very observant reader to continuously check that section and confirm that there's nothing that they perceive as affecting them.
Supplemental? I'm just curious, if people were to sign to the text message option, is that something that could happen, because I'm seeing, like, I get all notifications when there's snow plowing happening. I know it's been a slow uptake, and I know you may not have the answer to that right now. How greatly has that been spread out in the community, and what's the usage percentage on the text message option?
Through the chair, I'm not familiar as to whether or not the public notices as it relates to public hearings would be included in the text messages options.
Yeah, at this time, I don't believe it is. CEO Burke?
Thank you. I'm not certain of that, but that's something that I'll certainly look into and see what the feasibility is for us to add in another option. That's something I can take away.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm just going to ask a quick question, and I'll let the next one in the queue here. Just curious on the 60 meters. I think the proponent, one of the concerns was there was a storm pond in that houses. And so I'm just curious, when we do that 60 meters, does the road get included after that? And then do P-wells and public spaces, easements, that kind of stuff, if they're across the street, do they count to, I guess, and indirectly move the buffer back farther?
Thank you. We will snap a 60-meter buffer from the property lines, and whatever properties are within that 60 meters are what would be included in a circulation. So to answer your question, we don't remove roads and we don't remove storm ponds or parks or whatnot, because we view that as having some sort of well, it's the same as if there were houses in between, in that it creates distance from subject properties. And to take it a step further, as noted in the report, the land use bylaw does allow for administration to adjust the circulation buffer based on discretion. However, historically, there were some concerns that at times we were choosing to create a larger buffer or a smaller buffer as a means to create or minimize public input to certain development matters. And so at that time, we landed on the decision that being consistent was a fair approach to residents and applicants and developers.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I'll come back in the queue. Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. I really echo my colleagues' points about the text message thing. I think that's the number one way that I tend to tell people, hey, sign up for city notifications. So I think that we should be looking at that. I'm also curious. So I noticed that we talk about what happens when there's an increase in density or intensity. Is there an examination of what happens to traffic patterns? So for example, I'm looking at what happened in Trader Ridge. Just the traffic patterns of an apartment building are very different than a commercial business area, even if you've got the same amount of people there every day. Is that part of the consideration of deciding what kind of notice we need to do?
Through the chair, it's not a consideration as to what kind of notice we need to do, but it is certainly something that administration reviews. So the development engineering division would determine as to whether or not the change of use could constitute a change in traffic patterns, and if additional information is required in the form of a transportation study.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wonder if something we might want to have some conversations about is what is the expectation of public notification when traffic patterns will change, and also how do we do that? So thinking about Trader Ridge, I get the people in the community that had concerns about what this might do, what this apartment development might do to traffic patterns when they're trying to get to work in the morning or get their kids to school in the morning. And I think there might have been a bit of a miss of not letting them have that input prior to the rezoning. So wondering, so there might be some merits talking about, is there a different notification based on what could change traffic patterns? Although I understand also that's complicated because you don't know what's going to change traffic patterns until you've done the traffic study, and you probably don't want to do the traffic study until you've rezoned and spend the money in it. So I get there's complication in there. But also along with that, I wonder if when there is something that might change the traffic area in a neighborhood, we should be looking at, well, maybe a sign shouldn't, maybe it's not important to get signs posted on the actual property itself so much as getting signs posted on city boulevards that are at the major intersections that would be impacted. And so just, I I think that there is probably some conversation around these that I'd love to have at some point with council more.
I tend to agree with that. I'm just going to ask one more question. I'll come back to you, Councillor O'Connor. Just curious on the visibility to signage. That was another thing that was brought up when one of the delegates come in, that they didn't see the signs. When you get a large site that has multiple corners, like that one was, almost a square, I guess, and speak. What's the process on that? Like, I did drive up and see that site, so there was a sign, but if you weren't using that one road, you wouldn't have seen it using the other road. So I'm just wondering if there's multiple access points to a site, if that changes how many signs are required.
Through the chair, so or to the chair, I guess, the land use bylaw does specify that there's one sign required for every 270 meters of frontage of a property. This particular case, the signage did meet that requirement, but admittedly, they could have been placed better. Given as far as process, what happens is we ask that the applicant send us pictures of the signs once they've been posted, and then throughout the 2-week period that they're required to be posted, then administration will go out and confirm that they haven't blown over or been vandalized or whatnot. In this particular instance, the signs could have been placed better, and it was missed that they could have been repositioned to be placed at a better angle. However, we're viewing this as a learning opportunity, and we've since implemented processes to confirm that the placement is more strategic and that they remain in place for the duration of the required time.
Okay, so that's more of a procedural thing, not necessarily going to change our bylaw. But what I am curious about, I think in that case there was 270 meters. I agree that we met our intent, but because it was on a corner and it was on one corner, not the other corner, when we get to that sort of scenario, do we need to be adding more signage? I mean, if your traffic pattern is to not use that street ever, we met the intent, but if nobody would have seen it if that was not the street they use. So I'm just wondering if we need to give any different consideration when it's a corner lot that has two corners on it. I don't know if there's been any consideration on that.
To the chair, I believe that we can simply insist on that as opposed to having to amend the bylaw to require changes.
Okay, so that's
view it on a case-by-case basis, and the point is taken, and we'll consider that for future applications.
Okay, and so with that, just to clarify on it, so that doesn't need to be a policy change or a bylaw change. That's something admin do. Does that change the fee structure though? Because we'd be supplying them with 2 signs now, potentially, or 3 signs potentially on those sites, or would that just be something we'd see the value and we'd want those additional signage on site?
Thank you. The costs of the sign, making the sign and posting it, is all borne by the applicant. So it's not baked into our fee structure.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go back to Councillor O'Connor, please.
Thank you, Chair Plott. I think Wade Plott brings up a very good point about the angles. So this particular development was on 2 blocks separated by a street. And I'm just wondering if the sign shouldn't be orientated parallel or a V-shaped sign on both corners, which means a potential for 4 signs because the traffic coming down the middle road. Am I correct? That there's, 2 properties but 1 development.
Through the chair, yes, as noted, in hindsight, in this particular case, they could have been placed better, and we've learned from this incident, and we will take a much closer look. This particular property is unique in that both of the sites that were rezoned are bound by roads on 3 sides, which is very unique. There's not many properties like that. Most properties have either a single property line fronting a road or 2, but 3 is considerably more rare. So we will look at these closer in the future.
Okay, thank you. And I'll have a separate motion on making a recommendation separate to the main motion for business.
Okay, I'll just got one more question, and then we'll let some business happen here. Just wondering, on the public engagement led by the applicant, it says that they need to undertake 2 of the following methods. When I look at those methods, it to me feels like most of the development community is probably doing more than the 2. And so my concern is I think the development committee that's in the space is usually doing a minimum above. I'm just wondering if there's been a look at doing 3 of the following methods. I mean, I think most developers are probably already doing at least 3 of those now. My concern is when we have somebody that's new to the process trying to repiece one piece of land, that if they're doing the minimum, that this last proponent was one of those not nice scenario in that where I feel like if we would have increased the amount of expectations on that, we might not have had as much public backlash. So I'm just wondering, has there been any thought about making that 3 of the following methods instead of 2 for the public engagement led by the applicant?
To the chair, it's entirely within council's discretion. If council would like to do 3 of the methods listed, at the time this was created, there was no process there was no process that the applicant was required to do. It was strictly up to the land use bylaw, and we put this in as a means for basically reducing the amount of questions that the public might have at a public hearing that an applicant can that an adjacent can ask the applicant through these means here. I believe there was, we were striving for a balance between providing information and including the community while also making it relatively easy and straightforward for the developers. But certainly it is up to council if you'd like to do 3 or more of the methods listed.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. It is a balancing act between industry and the community for sure. I'll just go back to Councillor O'Connor and then we'll go to Councillor O'Toole for business.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to recommend that administration look at development text messages, notifications for rezoning be included as a member for a method as communication, and to use QR codes that links to the city website on the signs. And in that way, it's immediate. You know exactly where the development is. And I think it's a very simple thing to do. So I'd like to recommend that.
Okay, just a question for administration. Is that a recommendation that would be for this report, or is that outside of this report? I'm just wondering how administration looks at that as...
I don't see any changes to the bylaw required for that, so that's something that we can review in action if feasible. So
it's more,
we take it as a motion. Yeah,
more of an outstanding items list that would come back to this committee for a future discussion on that. Okay, no, happy with that. Any questions or debate on the motion? Oh, did you? And the intent is for it to come back to committee, not to council.
Yes, and to bring it back. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just update that a little bit on your motion. So, Councillor Connor, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read the motion as.
Just let me. Yeah, that works for me. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll call that to question, please. Sorry, CEO Burke.
If I could just amend to the actual motion, it was to review, and that was my commitment. I'll bring that back. I'm hesitant to say we can do something that I don't know is technically possible. So,
fair point.
Then the motion was more looking us to look into.
Okay, so process on this now. I guess do we need to redo that motion to defeat it, or just okay. Look into the inclusion. Keith Glavin.
Thanks, Chair Palat. I did receive word from the contact center director that we can add this to the text messaging service. We just need to notify them of when that needs to occur. So it is possible, and we can action that.
Okay, that's great.
So could we go back to the original wording, I guess, and if we're looking at amending it, that it would include, I guess the other part would just be a change of putting the QR codes on the signs, which I don't know if they currently exist. Chief Glavin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Plot. That's just a practice that we can implement. I think we can implement both of these based on discussion with the two directors live right now. I think we can consider that we will just do that going forward.
Okay, so I guess could we go back to the original motion? The intent of the original motion would be fine.
Yep.
Yep, that looks great. Okay, please vote. And that carries. And sorry, Mayor Clayton, you were at another meeting, so you're just jumping in. Did you have any questions on the process before we go to business arising? Okay, so I'll go to Councillor O'Toole for business arising, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the information at this meeting. And with that, I move that the Operational Services Committee receive this report for information.
Okay, thanks for the motion. And that carries. So we'll go on to 4.3, Development Authority, and I'll look to Chief Glavin to introduce, please.
Thanks, Chair Palat. My intro might cover most of the report here. So we're recommending that Alison Downing be appointed as a development officer. This is part of her new role of overseeing the development officer team as part of the restructuring we did in the fall. And with that, I'll perhaps just let you, if you have any questions for Mr. Johnson.
Any questions from committee? Seeing none, I'll just first say a nice big step for Ms. Downing, who's been with the city for a long time, and under guidance with Mr. Johnson, I'm sure this is going to be a great fit, so looking forward to this. So business arising, Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much. I move the committee recommend council appoint Alison Downing as a development officer to exercise development permitting powers, duties, and functions on behalf of the city.
Thank you for that. Please vote. And that carries. And so similar to 4.3, we'll go to 4.4, and I'll look to Chief Glavin to introduce that as well, please.
Thank you, Chair Palat. Kind of same as the last one, relatively short report here. So administration is recommending that Ashley Coulter be appointed as a subdivision authority officer to ensure adequate coverage and customer service. As we only have one other officer, which is Ms. Downing. This is just to ensure that when we have somebody away, that we can make sure that subdivisions keep on occurring.
Okay.
That all. If you have any questions for Mr. Johnson.
All right. Any questions from committee or just more business? Just want to say this looks like more of a housekeeping item, so I'll go to Councillor O'Connor for motion, please.
Okay. I'd like to recommend council appoint Ashley Coulter as Subdivision Authority Officer to exercise subdivision powers, duties, and functions on behalf of the city.
Thank you for the motion.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
And that carries. We have no correspondence or other business, so I'll go back to Chief Glavin for outstanding items list, please.
Thank you, Chair Palat. Today we addressed 1341 as well as 1330, and this was addressed at the previous committee, but it is on our outstanding items list, and outside of that, those are the only two amendments.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor O'Toole?
If it's all right with you, I'll take care of business. And with that, I move that we pass the outstanding items list as amended.
Thank you for the motion.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
And that carries. And with that, we're done our committee business, so we will adjourn and we'll be back momentarily for our next committee. Thank you.